to GovCom Talent Talks, the podcast where we explore the exciting journey of high-level talent transitioning from government service into impactful roles in the government sector. Whether you're considering a career shift, navigating the job market, or seeking advice on making the most of your government experience in the private sector, this podcast is your go-to resource for career transitions and opportunities in the world of GovCom. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. I'm Scott Robinson. I'm president and CMO of Forum, and I'm the host of our new podcast series, GovCom Talent Talk. Today, I'm joined by Christa Houck. Thank you for joining me today, Christa. And
hello, good morning. Thank you for having me, Scott.
Of course. So glad to have you here. So I'll give you a chance to talk a little bit about yourself and talk about what area or agency you are actually departing from and what you focused on in your most recent role.
So I am departing from the Department of Defense after a 13-year career in government contracting. So I most recently worked for the Office of Naval Research as a senior administrative contracting officer and team leader. In that role, I led a team of post-award management professionals in administrating research contracts and grants, which are awarded to nonprofits and universities around the globe. So our customer at the Office of Naval Research was the warfighter and ultimately the nation. And in that role, I was focused on ensuring compliance to federal regulations. So this was quite the fork in the road for me most recently. I did not anticipate leaving the government or the Department of Defense. So on to the next thing.
Right, exactly. But that's a great skill set that you acquired as part of DoD. So that's just amazing. If we talk a little bit more about skills and experience, how can government professionals highlight their unique expertise when applying for positions in industry? And even more so, how have you thought about how your skills translate to a job that's on part of the more corporate side of things?
Right. So speaking from my contracting professional's perspective in the government, I know I already understand all the federal regulations and the unique complexities around government contracts, which those are very convoluted. So it's pretty well known that government contract administration and regulations are very convoluted. So for others that are in my shoes, I think you're probably in the federal service because you wanted to serve the country. And so I'm trying to ask myself, how can I continue my patriotic mission to support the country, even if it's on the other side of the table? Right. So brainstorm what problems did I solve on the government side and how I can leverage that to improve processes on the industry side. So my 13 years in government contracting, it brought me the biggest strengths to the table, which is meticulous attention to detail, my business judgment, compliance, expertise, and most importantly, I'd say coming from the government, like myself, I'm sure that others have the ability to dumb things down to simpler terms that are easier to digest. So overall, I think that's a huge win for the expertise that you bring to the industry because we know how complicated things can be.
Right. And simplifying them is always a plus. So that's great. So you talked about a lot of things that you've done in the past and in your most recent role, actually. What are some of the roles that you're seeking and what are you looking to transition into? What types of things would you like to do?
So my overall true passion is leading and mentoring others. So I do desire the opportunity to lead a contract team in the management of complex contract compliance. So in the little bit that I've done, trying to narrow this down on what I want in the industry, it would probably be within the aerospace and defense industry. And it might include the director of contracts, the senior contracts manager, or government contracts lead. But it needs to be a role that challenges me and allows me the opportunity to improve processes in industry while increasing morale and leading the team.
Wonderful. That's great. And, you've given this a lot of thought, which is fantastic. If you had any wisdom to impart to other government professionals and how they could better position themselves when they're looking for high-level roles in industry, kind of what wisdom would you impart? What would you say to them about finding the role that is the perfect fit?
So I'm in the very infancy stage of trying to find my role. as of today, I haven't actually applied for a single job. All I've done so far is get back into LinkedIn and start networking. I talked to a recruiter. I talked to an entrepreneur last week, and this is my very first podcast. So I guess venturing into what makes you uncomfortable, that's what I've always done, because I get really uncomfortable with things like this, but I'm just trying to branch out. And I'm not on the other side of this yet, but I know I'm trying to maintain my confidence. So I'd say be confident and know your worth and what you're capable of. And the advice that I've been reading and writing down for myself is that you don't have to start from the beginning, even though it feels like it in this very moment. And I do know that I have the qualifications, and the right company will invest in my potential to meet all the qualifications, even if I don't have all of them right now. And one other thing to note here is that I've realized, because I should mention that my job with the government was 100% remote. So I was hired 100% remote and in Tennessee. So I don't have a federal agency to bounce back on right here in this area. So I need to weigh my pros and cons on my next job. What will I get 100% remote again? Probably not. Can I take hybrid? I can probably consider that.
As part of your job search and knowing what's happening around remote work in government right now, how are you looking at your job search, and what are you trying to do to possibly land a remote work or hybrid work arrangement with your next employer? How are you kind of approaching that?
Sure. So the next position that I hope that I will obtain will have to be the right fit for me, for my work-life blend. So I was 100% remote for the Navy, and during my remote time, I encountered the pandemic and motherhood. I have 2 children. So in a constantly changing environment, I was able to navigate that successfully and create what was the perfect work-life blend for me. So my next job will have to continue to embrace exactly what I'm looking for, which is
that is an interesting consideration. And that's probably what some other folks that either had a remote position either in the States or abroad will have to think about as well. So that's interesting. I guess that is something to think about as far as what type of role, which is there a hybrid role? Is there even a remote role available? And what concessions do you need to make, because you don't have a physical kind of office to fall back on in that regard. So that's interesting to bring up.
For sure.
Absolutely. I think that was all the questions I have today, but I wanted to see if there was anything else you could touch on or wanted to touch on, or is there another parting statement that you'd like to make?
Sure. I did want to mention that I'm noticing there's tons of resources that are coming in on LinkedIn in my short time branching back into LinkedIn in this past couple weeks. There's one called the Federal to Private Jobs, led by an entrepreneur. He's utilizing AI tools to optimize government resumes into the private sector. So that was interesting. And it's just nice to know that we're not alone for those that are in my position.
And that's great. And there are a number of resources that are coming online to help folks just like you and others to just get matched with the perfect role and hopefully make a smooth transition. So we really appreciate that. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining me today, Christa. This is our first voyage on this podcast, and I really appreciate you being our guest today. And we look forward to hearing back from you, and we wish you the best of luck in your job search.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your support. Thank you.
Of course. Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of GovCom Talent Talks. We hope you gained valuable insights and practical tips for making a successful transition from government to industry. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss another. We've got more stories, advice, and expert interviews coming your way. Until next time, keep pushing forward and making an impact as you navigate your career transitioning.